Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Two Saints podcast show this afternoon with myself, Mark Carter, and my co-host, Mark H. So, weary from all these travels and tribulations he's had recently. How you doing, Mark?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. Apologies for last week to the listeners. It was entirely my fault. Nothing to do with Mark C. Basically, tried to email the details to him. Thought it was all there. Went ahead, thought it was sent. Came back, failed, and then I couldn't recover any of the email whatsoever. So it meant basically that the work I'd done for the show had been lost. Unfortunately, I was in a bit of a rush because I'd been at the Newport game the night before, which obviously didn't help things. But we're hoping to bring you basically 2 weeks in the shape of 1 week on the podcast. And in the meantime, I hope all the listeners are looking after each other.
Coming up, we've got a really packed Two Saints podcast for you. We have Two Saints Roundtable reviewing Saints 1, Man United 1, Newcastle United 2, Saints 2, and Newport County 0, Saints 8. We've also got Saints Club news and other football news. Just to remind you all, you can contact us via our email address, the Two Saints Podcast Show at outlook.com, for questions or items you'd like to hear in future shows. You can listen to the radio show on Fiesta 95 FM in Southampton and via onlineradiobox.com. Also, the Two Saints Podcast Show is now available via Spotify, SoundCloud, Overcast, Acast, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Deezer, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music and Podbean, or via our Facebook page, The Two Saints Show, and our YouTube channel, The Two Saints Podcast Show. So we'll be starting things with Two Saints Roundtable review of Saints 1, Man United 1. Welcome everyone. So this is the Two Saints review of Man United and the preview of Newcastle United in Saints Roundtable with myself and Mark H. So Saints earn a point against United. Ralph Hasenhüttl felt it was a great performance and Adams is enjoying the Armstrong link up. For me, Mark, I thought so starting from start of the game through to the end, bit of a shambles beforehand, people trying to get in and whatever have you. People finally get in the stadium. Saints brass were there. They're normally outside the stadium, actually inside the stadium this time. And they were going around the outside of the pitch playing a version of when the Saints go marching in. For me, it reminded me of when I used to go to the Darrell, my dad, and the Albion brass band we used to have there. And what I liked about it was it got all the fans singing along to when the Saints go marching in. And I just thought, as the start of the game, instead of all that other stuff we normally hear, I thought it set it up really nicely with the fans. It got all the fans involved, which I know the club have struggled to do in the past. And I just felt that sense of unity, which was nice, because we all haven't been at the stadium for so long. So it was really nice to see a full stadium, to hear everyone singing that. A little bit of goosebumps, because I've not been to football for a long time. And I just thought it was a little something that was just quite nice to bring the fans together. I'd like to see it before each game, because I thought it was far better than some of the pre-match music we normally get. So from my point of view, that was good. It's a good way to start it. Obviously, game starts and you're thinking, blimey, unchanged team. I was a little bit concerned it was an unnamed team after getting beaten by Everton. I thought, oh, blimey, has Ralph not learned anything from last week? We're going to get absolutely thumped here. They beat Leeds 5-1. We're going to get hammered. I'd obviously predicted we were going to get a draw. And so obviously Saints take the lead through Shay Adams. Fantastic work goal. Brilliant play from Jack Stevens, winning the ball off Bruno Fernandes. Sets up Shay Adams, I thought took the goal really well. Looked as though it might have had a bit of deflection on it. But nevertheless, well taken goal. Adam Armstrong for me during the game had a couple of great chances. I felt defensively we played very well. Tino Livramento, absolutely superb. At one point picks the ball up and goes on an absolute gut-busting run all the way down the pitch. Absolutely phenomenal. Almost had me out of my wheelchair, to be fair. I was that excited by it, which has been a long time since I've seen a fullback that exciting. It turns out our other fullback's no slouch either. Roman Perot at one point gets down the wing, puts a cross in. He's proved he's got a bit of pace. For me, the positives were definitely Tino Livramento. Defensively, I thought we played quite well. Adam Armstrong looks a real prospect. Looks as though he'll take more chances than he'll miss. He had a good couple of chances, to be fair. One of them very well saved by De Gea. The other one, in fairness to him, although he probably should have scored, I think the header chance actually came at him too quickly. He barely had any time to react, to be fair, and it kind of just bounced off his head, which is a real shame because he could have, those two chances, he could have made an absolute hero of himself. I felt second half, you're always worried that Saints are going to capitulate. They didn't. They played quite well second half. So for me, the positives are strike pairing up front seemed to work quite well. Team played well as a unit. I thought to a man they all played really well. Defensively, we were good. Jack Stevens' best game in the Saints shirt. The downside for me, Alex McCarthy, proving yet again that he gives soft goals away. I thought he should have done far better with that goal. The ball's almost straight at him, practically goes for his legs. He was finding it very difficult to marshal his defence. And we got away with one very early on
where there's a bit of a ricochet, it comes off the crossbar. I mean, it's basically come off the head of a Man United player. He's not really directing it at goal. It's basically just gone up in the air. It's actually hit the crossbar, and Alex McCarthy's all at sea. He's nowhere near it. So for me, a little bit of panic setting, and I thought that was caused by him, to be fair. But all-round performance from the team, I thought it was a well-earned point, a very hard-fought point, and it's something to build on, definitely.
Well, thanks for that, Mark. Now I'm going to give my reflections. So I'm going to be slightly more brutal. The point was more than welcome. It was an emotional return to the stadium for me personally. For those people that don't know, I basically haven't been out of the house for 18 months, and it was the first time out. And it was nice to be home again at St Mary's. And, all right, I wasn't shouting my head off like I normally am, slightly more refined, wearing my face mask. But basically the game, I thought personally we looked shaky in the first 15 minutes, if I'm totally honest. And the worry always for me was if they went in front, then we would make a game of it. So it was always important that we scored first to at least try and make a game of it. I think the nature of the way that things happened, obviously Shea, scores from a deflected goal, but I just want to deal with the incidents as they happen chronologically. I agree with you. I don't think the header was necessarily going in. It was sort of directed towards goal. And
in fairness, Mark, it didn't look like a clean header, actually. It looked as though it just deflected off his head. It didn't even look like he'd even directed it goalwards. Because he's kind of falling over when it hits him.
Yeah, no, I know. But the thing was that basically you have that incident, and within that incident, the thing that I was most worried about was if someone's clearing the ball off the line, because it felt like one or two people had a go before. It was a Salisu actually sort of toe poked it, and that wasn't that convincing, to be honest with you, because I think someone else further up in the 18-yard box ended up basically having to clear it from the 18-yard box. So his actual, although it went off the line, his clearance off the line, if you like, wasn't actually that convincing. And my most worrying thing was there was 4 players kind of stood round the ball, and I was half worried that when Salisu, and I think he was as well, that if he hit it, it might ricochet off one of the players and go in the back of the net. So shaky start for me, grew into the game, and I have to say I admired Djenepo's doggedness, okay, because there was some real meaty challenges going in down his wing, and actually that opened up the wing more for Perraud to make those runs down, and Livramento was doing the same thing. So it was kind of great for the fullbacks. Didn't really think though that when they had the ball, yes, they're running towards goal or they're running into space, but there was no delivery. So there was no real final delivery. So Jack, I agree with you about Jack Stephens. I think he needs to keep a lid on things when he's on the pitch, though. It's all right speaking to the ref. I think he could have easily seen himself get a yellow card, because I did feel he overdid it a little bit. I understand what his grievance was.
In fairness, Mark, that's the only thing I left out, actually. It was actually good to see from our players, for once, a bit of regression, because we've been accused of being too lightweight in the past.
Yeah,
but they've got to keep it in check as well.
No, I don't want to get too bogged down with that, mate, to be honest with you. I'm not really interested in that. All I would say is that Salisu and Tino and Jack Stephens played well. I still think, even though Romain Perraud was getting forward well, I still think he needs a bit of work on his game. But just going to the downside, Alex McCarthy wouldn't be in that team for me. And I still stand by what I say. there may be a cigarette paper between them, but I would still have Fraser in goal. And the only other downside that I would have is that Theo Walcott, for the start in the starting 11, he doesn't do enough. Just doesn't do enough. But again, it's all down to personal opinions. The main thing, Mark, is that obviously Shea Adams score, Man United then, score not too long afterwards, let's be honest about it. And the greatest fear was, are we going to see a capitulation here? And they stood firm, and that was good to see. And I think Ralph got his substitutions right, and he can feel vindicated by his selection on Sunday.
Yeah.
So especially as, like you mentioned, we went into the stadium, and I think when the team was read out and you thought, same again as Everton, you thought, we're going to be on the end of hiding here, and we weren't. So Ralph can feel vindicated about that. He can feel vindicated that he got his substitutions right, personally, for me. And it was overall, when you look at it, it was a good performance. They were worthy of the point. It was deserved. What I want to see is, I want to see that every week in the Premier League, and let's hope we can do that. Just as a footnote, I think Saints made the correct decision in deciding to refund everybody. Yes, it was chaos. It was a mess. And, and the club, rightfully held their hand up to it, because let's be brutally honest, Mark, they've had 18 months to get it right. They've known Saints fans were going to be coming back in their droves at some point. And, I would suggest that we were not prepared. And all I'd say to the listeners is, in the lead up to the actual game on the Sunday, Mark and I both seen the people queuing to get paper tickets because they hadn't got their season tickets at the ticket office on the Friday and Saturday in the lead up to it. And you sort of sensed that there was going to be, a bit of a problem even on the Sunday. Now, I understand that one of the problems was that the scanners, the newly installed scanners, weren't reading the barcodes off the paper tickets, which was one of the reasons for, obviously, the amount of people stood outside and trying to get in and stuff like that. But they need to learn lessons, and they need to learn it quickly. Yes, I do think it was good that the club have offered refunds, but they need to be much more professional, and they need to sit down.
Well, the one that alarmed me, Mark, to be fair, was the fact that they were actually opening disabled access doors to allow other fans in. Yeah. And I was a bit like, you're kind of, in a way, you're kind of putting the most vulnerable fans at risk there. In a way, I appreciate a lot of people probably were testing whatever, but the club didn't actually follow through on the protocols they were talking about before the game, or I didn't see any evidence of that. So potentially, you could have had people going in there that weren't tested, that had issues, blah blah blah, and other people could have ended up getting ill as a result of that. So I understand the club were under quite a lot of pressure at the time, high pressure environment, lots of people around. They were trying to do the best they could to get everyone in, but I don't actually believe that opening the accessible entrances was the answer. To be fair, that's just my take on it. Also, I'd go further with the fact that not only have they had 18 months to sort this out, I think the club have been far too occupied with these new fantastic lounges and all this other stuff they're doing around the stadium to have dealt with the key issue, which for me is ticketing and access. And those, for me, should be the first two things you look at before any new season. Never mind all these lounges and upgrades to the stadium and all that other stuff. Sorry, that's an absolute nonsense. Deal with the ticketing and deal with the access, because that's far more important. Because if you can't access that stadium, you're not going to earn any money from your fans that are attending games like Man United and Liverpool. You won't make any profit as a football club.
But anyway, I agree a little bit with what you're saying, but in essence, what you're saying, Mark, is don't worry about the flowery stuff. Try and get the basics right first.
Deal with the fundamentals. Get your fundamentals right before you worry about fancy lounges, padded seats, or anything of that nature.
Yeah.
Craft beers, changes to menus, or whatever. Deal with your ticketing. Deal with your access, because that's far more important. I'm not bothered about a fancy pasty or a fancy beer or whatever. I'm more bothered about whether I can get in the stadium to watch my team. So yeah, but all in all, look, I thought fantastic points. Definitely something to build on. That brings us to an end the Two Saints review of Man United on Saints Roundtable.
Make the Two Saints Show your choice of listening for everything Saints and football. Listen to the show and the weekly podcast for all the latest.
Saints Club news coming up now. So starting with the statement from the club with regards to the Man United ticketing situation. And this is a club apology. Further to communications during the game against Manchester United this afternoon, the club would like to once again apologise for the ticketing and entry issues which many fans experienced. The club has already started a full investigation into today's turnstile entry issue, where our initial assessment is that the scanning of tickets took significantly longer per person we experienced in our recent pre-season matches and our behind closed doors testing. We will start work immediately with our access partner to fully understand the reasons for this delayed entry and the solutions to avoid a repetition. Please rest assured the club view these stadium entry delays as unacceptable. Regarding the delayed receipt of season tickets by certain purchasers, once again, please accept our apologies. Although many fans did receive their season tickets in time, we accept the delay or non-arrival caused unnecessary anxious wait for some fans. Again, the club does not view this as acceptable, and the delays we experience with our supplier of the physical card is, whilst not something we could ultimately influence, a matter we take responsibility for and must ensure it does not happen again. Today's ticketing and entry issues were not the start we wanted to the season from a fan experience point of view. We know you've waited 16 months to be at a full stadium of Saints fans getting behind the team, and today's issues will have tainted that experience for a large number. Consequently, we'll be giving all general admission ticket holders, both season ticket holders and individual match purchasers, a refund for that game. A credit will be given to season ticket holders' account. Due to the volume of refunds, please bear with us while we process all transactions. Once again, on behalf of the club, please accept our apologies if your match day was affected by today's ticketing and entry issues. Thank you for your amazing backing of the team today and continued support at St Mary's. That was a statement issued by Toby Steele, Managing Director of Southampton FC, after the Man United game. Mark,
it's good to see that, you know, they're recognising obviously that there were failings, but again, to me, it's not really an apology from the club, and I'll tell you for why. They're blaming outside sources for the problems that they've had. Other Premier League clubs use same scanner systems, same sort of systems as what Saints have. There may have been outside influences and things like that, but ultimately the buck stops at the football club. The scanners and the new system were in place since the summer. Yep. So they effectively they've had, you know, around about 15 months to make sure that, you know, everything was working perfectly. Yep. And unfortunately, we could see, you know, from the Thursday, I would say Thursday afternoon, you realise that the outcome of that would be there was going to be problems on the Sunday. 100%. And so it happened to be. But, you know, it is what it is. You know, the club are doing the right thing in the sense that everybody's being refunded, whether you were affected or not. I'm assuming that it's because they can't go through each individual entry.
Yeah, I've actually got
who was there and who wasn't. Yeah. But even if they had the ability to do that, it would probably take a certain amount of time.
Yeah, they've actually, off the back of that, actually confirmed the refund process for supporters. As announced at the game, all fans who held a general admission seat, whether that be a season ticket or individual match ticket, will receive a refund for the game. Season ticket holders. All season ticket holders will have 1/19 of their season ticket value credited back to their account. This will include anyone who's paying via an instalment plan. although please note this credit unfortunately cannot be used against any remaining instalments that are left to pay this season. The credit can be used against the season ticket renewal, tickets for home Premier League matches, coach travel, stadium tours and other events sold by the club at St Mary's. At the end of the season, any credits unused that will not be used against renewal can be requested back as a direct refund. Credits will appear on Supporters My Saints account. Individual match ticket holders' funds will be refunded directly to their method of payment used to purchase their ticket. Any refunds where the payment to the card fails will be added to the supporters' account as a credit. Refunds will be shown in supporters' purchase history in their account. Please note, all away ticket holders will be refunded directly by Manchester United. Should you have any specific inquiries not addressed by the above, please contact tickets@saintssc.co.uk. So hopefully everyone will get their refunds in due course.
Yeah, I mean, all I would say in relation to the refunds is
Southampton complete the transfer of Janko Volkovic from Torino, the Brazilian who's also played for Serbia. A fee of £4.5 million, I believe, Mark.
The thing I really want to say about Lynchko is the fact that, I mean, yes, you welcome another body in through the door, but I would say his career up till now has been patchy at best. If he's anyway as good on social media as hopefully he is a footballer, then we've got an absolute bargain. But all I would say, Mark, is his Torino career was non-existent as far as I'm concerned. And the only bright spot of his time in Italy was actually when he was out on loan at Bologna. And that was probably his most productive time in Italy. Of course, with a checkered past, you're going to jump at the chance to come to the Premier League, even if it is little old Southampton.
Southampton Football Club's delighted to announce it's completed a deal for sought-after teenage talent Thierry Small, with the youngster moving to St Mary's from Everton. The 17-year-old left-back signed a 3-year professional contract with the club, adding further strength and depth to Ralph Hasenhüttl's squad ahead of the summer transfer window.
What I would say is, yes, definitely excited about the signing. One of Everton's youngest players. In fact, I think he's the youngest player, even Wayne Rooney to the title. He's actually the youngest player that played for Everton in the Premier League. It's another good signing. I think this one's a good signing, certainly for the future. You know, he's got it all laid out in front of him, a bit like Tino. So let's see how he develops. And basically, he's here to push on and hopefully, you know, be a not just a backup, but obviously make appearances for the first team at some point this season. I would expect it.
Well, if he has the sort of impact that Livramanto's had, then we're looking good on both flanks, aren't we, to be fair?
Oh, very much so. Very much so.
So, moving on to another departure. Southampton Football Club can confirm striker Michael Obafemi has completed a transfer to Swansea City. It's actually a permanent transfer, everybody. The 1-year-old academy graduate formalised the move to the Championship side ahead of the window closing, bringing his time at St Mary's to an end. He became a senior Republic of Ireland international during his time with Saints, departs after making 39 appearances for the first team and scoring 5 goals. The club would like to wish him well for the future and thank him for his efforts during his time at Southampton.
At the end of the day, Saints have come to the realisation, with the player being 22, I think, that basically he's not going to score you the volume of goals that's going to be necessary for a striker is at Southampton Football Club, and that's whether you're a backup or whether you're playing for the first team. And that's the brutal truth of it. And it's probably a brutal truth that, you know, Shane Long's going to be facing either in January or next summer. You know, a parting of the waves was probably the best thing for both sides. And one of the things I'm interested to know, if you can give me any insight, is what fee did he actually move to Swansea for?
So the initial fee is $1.5 million, rising to $2 million. So not a lot of money.
Peanuts. I think both clubs and the media had an overestimation of him personally. As I say, £2 million, that's nothing, is it? But good luck to him.
It's another player off the wage bill, isn't it?
Yeah, good luck to him. You know, hopefully he can improve Swansea's fortunes this season.
You know, hopefully he'll do well. So I wish him all the best. So moving on to Premier League 2. Premier League 2 report, Saints were held 0-0 at Nottingham Forest on the 23rd of August. It was a 7 p.m. kickoff. Saints did have key chances to win the game in both halves, but were frustrated by a strong performance from Jordan Wright in the Forest goal.
Right. So just to say, Mark, you know, the good news is that the B team have got on the board and got off the mark. That's really at the minute, all you can say. It's a good point away from home, gives them something to build on. And I know you're going to come on to the next report from the B team.
I will, yeah. And it was Middlesbrough 2, Southampton 1. Middlesbrough goals were actually scored by. So Middlesbrough goals were from Josh Coburn and Jeremy Sivvy, and the Southampton goal scored by Kazim Alegbe, the Saints' number 11. But they fell to a 2-1 defeat ultimately, Mark. So off the back of having something to build on,
it sounds like
lost.
It was a bit of a sucker punch as well, because it was a goal later on. The thing that sort of springs to mind with the B team is it's kind of ironic, because we're seeing that, you know, the women's team and the under 18s both got off the winning starts in their opening fixtures, you know, and then on the flip side, the B team, we're probably seeing more of a work ethic. You know, I don't necessarily think we're going to see them win loads of games this season, which is baffling, really, because, you know, I keep saying it. People need to remember that we've got relegated. You know, we're basically playing amongst the championship B teams now, you know, or reserve teams, or whatever you want to call it. And, you know, there doesn't seem to be any sort of marked improvement in terms of results, because what you would expect is, if you've come from a higher standard into a lower standard, you'd expect to be winning the odd game. So that is a slight concern there, I've got to say. But it's, at the end of the day, you know, the previous week, the drew 0-0, they've lost probably a game they should have got a draw out of, because basically they got hit by the sucker punch towards the end of the game. And let's hope that in the coming weeks, you know, the B team can move forward and start picking up wins.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I can't help thinking the Ollie Lancashire experiment hasn't worked yet, Mark, has it? He was brought in to add a bit of experience and out, and it seems to be backfiring.
No, I mean, the thing is I suppose the argument would be that anything that he's imparting to the players at the moment, you know, it's going to take time for it to sort of, you know, register in the brain, and sort of hopefully as the season progresses, you know, the bits and pieces that he's imparting to the B team players will have the desired effect.
Oh, 100%. So moving on to the youngsters, the under 18s, 5-goal Doyle earned Saints a big win. So it was Southampton 7, Birmingham City 2, a stunning 5-goal haul for forward Cammy Doyle at the under 18s to a superb 7-2 win over Birmingham City. The goals were actually, the goal scorers were, and I'll just get to the list for you. So Southampton's goal scorers were Dom Ballard, he got 1, Fedel Ross-Lang got 1, and then Cammy Doyle with 5, the highlight of those being a free kick, it bent in over the wall. Absolutely fantastic free kick. And goal scorer for Birmingham was Luke Carsley. There were 2 yellows and a red for Chris Ogore of Birmingham. No cards for Southampton, but an emphatic win, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is it just kind of builds on, you know, how the season started for the under 18s. One of the, you know, obviously the pick of them was Cam Doyle, who's basically, you know, scored the 5. Yep. You know, I think it's important also to mention that Dom Ballard is in a rich vein of form. I think he's scored 3 and 3, something like that now. So, you know, he's a man very much in form as well. And the other thing of note that I took from that game, funnily enough, was the fact that I noticed for the opposition, Jude Bellingham's younger brother actually played for the Birmingham City side. Job Bellingham. So, you know, it'd be interesting to see how he develops, you know, later on in his career, or develops over the next little while. But certainly it's been a storming start for the Saints under 18s, and, you know, it looks very promising, you know, basically heading into the rest of the season.
Yeah, and moving on from there, they went on to play West Ham, got a 3-1 result against West Ham, maintaining their 100% record to the start of the season. So they're unbeaten still. It's 3-1 to Southampton, which is fantastic, obviously. Goal scorers for West Ham was George Earthy, scored for West Ham. The Saints goal scorers were Jem Hewlett, Tyler Diblin, and then another one for Dominic Ballard. So he's in absolutely fantastic form, Mark, as you said. But Saints running out 3-1 winners and maintaining their 100% start to the season. Brilliant.
I mean, what a revelation it's been, because the under-18s were much like the B team last season, where they couldn't buy a win. I think, you could see in the under-18s though that basically it was a case of they were at least winning occasionally, and then obviously the other thing that you would kind of look at is. For me, you have players within that team even now who are maybe a year older, but also you've got players then that have come into the age group and basically they're being revelations. Let's be totally honest about it. I mean, it's, the transformation to last season's been pretty amazing, to be honest. The early results certainly are indicating that. Whether we're able to keep it up for the rest of the season, we shall see.
Absolutely. So moving on to Francis Bernardi, absolute club legend. Where are the awards going to end? He's obviously just come off the back of getting an MBE, which is thoroughly deserved. And these awards are thoroughly deserved, to be fair. But he's becoming the first recipient of the Forever Saint Award. The former left-back who's gone on to raise more than £1 million for Cancer Research UK through a series of incredible challenges, received the accolade during the half-time of the game against Man United. The Forever Saint Award, which will be presented at home matches throughout the season, celebrates incredible contributions made to the club and community by ex-players, club servants and community champions. Absolutely fantastic, thoroughly deserved, Mark. Where do the awards end?
Yeah, I mean, you can't really use enough superlatives when it comes to Franny, really, can you?
Absolutely.
The only thing I would say is, I mean, the award, I mean, he must have loads of awards that Saints, CFC have given him, but fantastic, and richly deserved and all of that. But Mark, here's a point I want to make. If you're gonna, spoil one of Southampton's own, growing up in the city and everything else, but if you're gonna give him the plaudits, right, at least make sure that when you're giving him the plaudits, right, that, preferably it's not at the start of the season, right, the very first home game where you're having ticketing issues, because if you actually look at the photograph, right, obviously the award was given to him before kickoff. I'm sure he had a lovely time in corporate hospitality and everything else, and that kind of added to his day. But the fact that he's turned up and they've awarded him the award and the photographs in the stadium, right? And, he was announced before kickoff, make sure that the stadium is full so that people can appreciate him for the absolute star that he is. I mean, star locally in our eyes, I just thought it was bad planning. You look at the photograph, obviously there was the entry issues, and he didn't really get the plaudit he deserved, which would have been a full stadium, everybody singing his name and everything else.
I can't argue with you there, Mark. In all fairness, it was a poor show all round, to be fair. The entire afternoon was just a poor show. Thankfully, the players on the pitch didn't let us down. That was quite a good performance on the pitch, thankfully.
Yeah, no,
which kind of made up for it a little bit. But
but Franny, I'm sure this is another award again of many more to come. And it was richly deserved. It's just a pity that looking at this photograph, you weren't given the platform that you probably deserved as well.
Yeah, and I must admit, I'm very proud to be associated with an association that he's the ambassador of. So he's an absolute legend, and I can't credit him enough for all the stuff he does for the community and for the club. For people associated with the club. So well done, Franny, absolute legend. And he's got an autobiography out, everyone, if you want to have a little read of that. And his thoughts on Nicola Cortese are quite interesting. So give it a read if you get a chance. So moving on now. Southampton FC are delighted to announce the signing of striker Katie Rood, who joined Saints from Lewis FC. She spent 7 years at Glenfield Rovers in her home country, New Zealand, before making a move to Juventus in 2017. Her first taste of English football came in 2012, when she spent a period with Lincoln Ladies in the FA WSL. So she's just moved to Southampton from Lewis. Interesting as well. Saints obviously beat Lewis in pre-season, Mark.
Yes, I mean, look, I wouldn't read too much into the fact that she played for Lewis. I would read more into the fact that she was once at Juventus. She's played for Lincoln City women, obviously in the top flight. And obviously, again, it's another sign into the roster that shows that there's a level of experience there over and above the league that we're already in. Yeah. So, things are already building as far as I'm concerned for football in the women's, what is the women's championship next season. We're going to come on to much more women's football issues throughout the show today, funnily enough. But again, it's another great signing for Saints, and you can see everything's building brilliantly.
Yep. So we'll keep that rolling on. Women's report. Saints are 2 from 2. Plymouth Argyle 0, Southampton 3. Saints FC women breezed consecutively victories, comfortably beating Plymouth Argyle 3-0 away from home. And the goal scorers for Southampton were Lita Rutherford with 2 and Kiara Watling with 1. And it ended up 3-0 to Saints. So another great afternoon and unbeaten for the women, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, look, you run out of superlatives for the women, to be honest with you, Mark. But nothing at the minute with the women really surprised me. I mean, they're at a level where basically they should be the level above for me. I've stated more than once since basically kickoff or even pre-season that I'm fully expecting them to get up into the championship for next season, and then let's see where we go from there. Yeah. One thing of note was the Kiara Watling goal. I mean, it's great to see a new signing who obviously signed, only a few weeks ago, and she's already off the mark, and that's great to see. But as I say, it was another great win, and I know you're going to take us on to the next report.
Certainly am. It was an Ella Pusey double in either half. Continued Saints women's perfect start to the National League Southern Premier Division, beating Chichester and Salisbury 2-0. So yeah, I said Ella Pusey with both goals there in a 2-0 win. So unbeaten still.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, it's just amazing, mate. I mean, again, you can't ever take things for granted, and you can only beat what's put in front of you.
Yeah, what's the women's equivalent of United?
Ella Pusey, who was basically, the main goal scorer, certainly up front for his last season, coming in with a double, and at the end of the day, this momentum, if you get early wins, you're getting out ahead of everybody else, and it's just really, really good to see it, mate.
Yeah, and moving on to the following game as well. Not only are they getting ahead of everyone else regards to momentum, but they're certainly getting ahead of them in the goal difference charts. 9-0 against Gillingham, absolutely outclassed them. Ellie Morris with 2, replaced by Millie Mott in second half. Georgie Freeland with 2, Ella Pusey with 3, a hat-trick, Sophia Farrow with 1, and Kiara Watling with another. And they ended up 9-0 winners, absolutely blew Gillingham away at Snow Stadium. An absolute rout, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, man, it's amazing, and Marianne Stacey Keel. I mean, she must sit there and think to herself, "I've got a hell of a squad of women players on my hands here."
Yeah, what's the women's equivalent of United?
And if people apply themselves, it should be, another coast state title. But, I say that it's early doors, not taking anything for granted. But, you can see all the building blocks are in place, mate. Even, as I say, in terms of the recruitment, I think there was 3 or 4 came in. And, they've all had experience in the WSL. Which is obviously the top league in the country. So, you can see where we're moving. And like I keep saying to the listeners, just remember one thing. a lot of these, I mean, the majority, I would say, if not all of them, have day jobs. They've all got day jobs to do. So, they're coming in, they're doing their training, and then they're producing the performances they're producing on Sunday afternoons. And, I'm looking forward to a time when Saints actually give me my physical,
Absolutely.
women's season ticket. Yep. And you and I can go down to AFC Top, and watch them play on a much more regular basis, which I'm looking forward to.
So, fresh off the back of an emphatic 8-0 win against Newport County in the Cup, Saints are set for a Sheffield United reunion in the Cup. So they're going to travel to Sheffield United in the third round of the Carabao Cup. So off to Bramall Lane, everybody. I'm sure Mark will probably be making the trip, considering he went to Newport. And if he does, it's not going to be quite as straightforward as it was against Newport. I think Sheffield United are going to be a much stronger challenge, Mark, aren't they? But really good opportunity to progress, though.
I've got to say that, each time that we have played Sheffield United in recent years, or we've played them in the Premier League, we haven't lost to them. I think I'm right in saying actually that we've won all 4 games that we played against them recently in the Premier League. So, on the back of that, I would turn around and I would say to you, Mark, let's hope that they can keep the momentum going. Obviously, a lot of it will depend on what Ralph decides in terms of the lineup, although given that I always feel that he takes the cups fairly seriously in the same way he does the leagues, I'm expecting him to field, a fairly strong side. Also, that particular evening, because they've actually announced, even though I knew probably about a week ago that this was going to be the case, but they have announced that the date for the cup tie is Tuesday, the 21st of September, with a 7:45 kickoff. And I just thought I'd throw this into the mix. It would be nice to see us in the hat on my birthday for the next round of the League Cup.
Absolutely.
I hope that registered with you, Mark.
It did. Yeah, I'm just ever the professional, carrying on. So moving on to Saints September International Guide. It's the first international break of the season, and 8 Southampton players have been called up by their respective countries. Shay Adams for Scotland, Moe Elyounoussi for Norway, Shane Long for Republic of Ireland, Moussa Djenepo for Mali, Armando Broja for Poland, for Albania, Jan Bednarek for Poland, Tino Livramento for England, under 21s, Thierry Small for England under 18s, and then moving on to, so those are for, 1st of September, Shay Adams, 7:45, Moe Elyounoussi, 7:45, Shane Long, 7:45, and Moussa Djenepo, 8. That's the 1st of September. 2nd of September, Armando Broja, Albania, 7:45, Jan Bednarek, Poland, 7:45. These are all British Standard Time. 3rd of September, Tino Livramento, England under 21s. It's a Euro 2023 qualifier, 7 o'clock. Thierry Small, England under 18s. To be confirmed. 4th of September, Moe Elyounoussi versus Latvia, 5 p.m. Shane Long, Republic of Ireland versus Azerbaijan, 5 p.m. And Shay Adams, Scotland versus Moldova, 7:45. And then 5th September, Armando Broja, Albania versus Hungary. Jan Bednarek, San Marino versus Poland, 5 p.m. and 7:45 respectively. 6th September, Moussa Djenepo, Mali versus Uganda, 2 p.m. 7th September, Livramento, England under 21s, Shay Adams, Scotland, Moe Elyounoussi, Norway, and Shane Long, Republic of Ireland, all 7:45 kickoffs, except for Livramento's, which is 7 p.m. And Wednesday, 8th September, Armando Broja, Albania, San Marino, 7:45, and Jan Bednarek, Poland, England, 7:45. So plenty of games coming up, and let's hope they manage to get through it unscathed. So that brings us to the end of that section today. So I'm just going to take a very short break, and coming up, we've got 2 Saints Roundtable review of Newcastle United 2, Saints 2.
Tune in to the 2 Saints show every Thursday 1 to 3 p.m. on Fiesta 95 FM in Southampton and via onlineradiobox.com with Mark Carter and Mark H. With regular features such as Saints match previews, Saints match reviews, Saints in the press, Saints transfer gossip, goings on in and around the club, corner chat and the week's other football news.
Welcome to Saints Roundtable, everybody. So we're going to be discussing the Newcastle game, so it's a review of that. And we're also going to be discussing the Newport game, a review of that as well. So 2-2, the Newcastle game. That's how it ended. Also, the result could have been a lot worse, Mark. What was your take on it?
Hey, my take on it's very simple, mate. You go out, you dominate the first half of football. You know that if you come in half-time and you haven't made any inroads in the dominance that you've had in the first half, the chances are that it's going to come and bite you in the backside. And so it proved. You know, we had Moussa Djenepo, who basically could have had a hat-trick. The first one is unforgivable. I dare say even you would have had a decent stab at that one. He is an attacking winger by all accounts, although Ralph seems to like him for his defensive qualities. So what does that say about his attacking qualities? The second one, get it on his favoured side or whatever it is. But the moment's already gone then. I mean, by the amount of faffing about that's going on, you sort of sit there and you go, forget about it. You know, and then you've got probably, in terms of the momentum, because, you know, to be fair to Moussa, it was all of his own making, the third one just before half-time, you know, and he manages to hit it wide. It could have been also different, but then second half, you realise Newcastle are not going to be as bad as what they were in the first half. And so it proved, because 10 minutes in to the second half, you know, Callum Wilson gives them a lead. And then thankfully, Ralph decides to change it. On comes Nathan Redmond. And I've got to say, mate, at the end of the day, you know, he was responsible for saving our bacon. He was the game changer for me on Saturday. You know, he provided the cross for El Sanusi to score. And you kind of sit there and you think, well, there's a man that's obviously in a bit of form. Part of the reason why we conceded the second was we'd gone a little gun-ho looking for the 3 points. Get hit by the sucker punch. Obviously, you know, good goal by Alan St. Maximin. I mean, the players deserve a lot of credit because normally, if that had been last season, they would have been on the floor. They just would have said, forget about it. We're not going to be coming back into this game. They managed to refocus fairly quickly, get the ball into the Newcastle's half.
Yep.
The ball again gets played in by Nathan Redmond. You know, it's good to see Adam Armstrong being honest in that situation. You know, Mike Dean on VAR was able to give the penalty. You know, I'm thankful that we came away with a draw. I don't think that's the way we should be looking at it. No. The way we should have been looking at was it was a good opportunity to pick up 3 points.
For me, it's definitely 2 points lost because there was an opportunity to get a result somewhere where we don't normally get one.
Tino Liverento played at right full back, and then across from him we had Kyle Walker-Peters playing at left full back. Yep. Personally, going forward until Romain Perraud is completely up to speed with the Premier League, you know, it's something that I would like to see continued. The thing is I think that Ralph has set his stall out early doors. I did think that Ward-Prowse and Romeu both looked like they were carrying knocks. And, you know, Ward-Prowse wasn't getting forward. I mean, he was more or less deep lying, like Romeu. And it surprised me because normally in that situation, Ward-Prowse is further forward than Romeu. I found that in certain phases in the game, Romeu was the further forward player and Ward-Prowse was more the deep land midfielder. I wouldn't say they looked off the pace, but both seemed fairly reserved to me in the way that they were playing. That's what I would say there. It's hard to sort of assess the game because you kind of sit there and you think to yourself, you probably should have went in front at the break, and we didn't. But I do think it's a tinge of annoyance, as well as being grateful that we sort of salvaged or rescued a point, whatever way you look at it. I suppose at the end of the day, in terms of away form, you're sort of sitting there thinking to yourself, could do better by maybe taking the chances as they present themselves. My hope is that both strikers will hit 10 goals, and obviously as the partnership develops, that's what we hope for. My concern is, yes, you're going to get goals from James Ward-Prowse, of course you are, from his set, his free kicks and stuff like that there. But I look at the other attacking players and I sort of sit there and I think to myself, are our wingers, they're not going to give you more goals. I mean, you might get 2 or 3 from Stuart Armstrong in a league season, and maybe something from Nathan Teller.
If we create chances for our strikers, I believe they will score goals, but we need to give them service.
I just look at our wide players. You're not necessarily getting the service. Okay, Nathan Redmond was the saving grace on Saturday. I look at them in terms of their attacking players, and I just worry about how many goals the wider players are going to contribute when it comes down to the final analysis in the season. I'm still fairly chirpy, fairly optimistic in regards to where we can finish, but I do think alongside that, the attacking players, and I'm not just talking about the strikers, but the attacking players need to be taking the opportunities 100%. When they're presented to them.
And that, I think, probably sums everything up quite nicely for the Newcastle review.
It's the Two Marks, C&H, on the Two Saints Show, Fiesta 95 FM.
Right, moving on now. Other football news. And we start with Premier League transfers. Brighton signed Spanish defender Marc Cucurella and Slavia Prague's Abdallah Sima. Cucurella can play either as a left-back or wide midfielder, joins for a fee believed to be 15.4 million. The Seagulls have also signed Slavia Prague Senegal striker Abdallah Sima and immediately loaned him to Championship side Stoke City. He joins Brighton on a 4-year deal for an undisclosed fee. So moving on to Burnley. Burnley signed Ivory Coast forward striker Maxwell Cornet from Lyon for 12.85 million. Also, Aaron Lennon rejoins Burnley and starts in Carabao Cup because there's 3 of them, Mark, so I'll get them all in together for you. Aaron Lennon rejects Burnley and starts in the Carabao Cup. I said 2 for you, Aaron Lennon, obviously, and Maxwell Cornet.
Yeah, so basically, I have to say Maxwell Cornet was a surprise, mate. Just because he doesn't really fit the mould of what Burnley tend to do. They tend to go in for relatively experienced players, either in the Championship or in, with significant Premier League experience, and they come into Burnley. Normally they would be coming in near to the end of their contracts and stuff like that, so you wouldn't be paying significant money. I would say for Burnley, this is significant money, and obviously they feel that, the lad's good enough. Maxwell Cornet is good enough to make an impression, in the Premier League. I think it's a case of time will tell. From my own experience, I would say Ivory Coast, they tend to be a little bit, unless it's Didier Drogba, they tend to be a little bit inconsistent. I mean, we see that with Moussa Djenepo most weeks, obviously, and he plays for Marley. So, I mean, I have to say I've actually heard of the player, Mark. So, he comes with a fairly decent reputation from Lyon, and it'd be interesting to see how he does get on in the Premier League. I mean, obviously, once the Premier League comes calling for a lot of these players, it seems to be very difficult to turn down. I mean, bear in mind that Lyon's probably one of the top French clubs, good side. But, it'll be interesting to see how it goes. The other two, I'm not that surprised about. We've got Aaron Lennon, who obviously has rejoined after, I believe he had a spell in Turkey. And obviously he's come in, he came in last week, funnily enough. I know we're playing a little bit of catch up here. But obviously came back for his second spell. I would say in his first spell he done reasonably well, and that's why, you know, Burnley have looked at the situation. Obviously, he's rejoined. He had I think he was over in Turkey for 2 years, or 18 months. So, you know, obviously Burnley's looked at that and they've decided to re-sign him. Got all the relevant experience that you would expect of a Burnley kind of signing, and you know, they'll be hoping that he goes well for them. And this one was much more interesting for me. So Connor Roberts, you know, had an exceptional Euros, believe it or not, for Wales. You know, he's probably one of their standout players in the tournament. And his contract obviously was due to expire next summer. And he's joined Burnley, obviously, for a nominal fee. You know, again, I sort of sat there and I think to myself, you know, there's players out there to be had, and Burnley sort of demonstrated that. Obviously, has the relevant international experience, loads of experience in the Championship, and of course, the question now will be, can he step up to the Premier League? I think with the amount of international experience that he's had, he'll be able to do it without any trouble at all.
Yep, absolutely. So moving on to Chelsea. Saul Niguez. Chelsea signed Atletico in Spain midfielder on loan after Sevilla rejects Koundé bid. So they've signed the 26-year-old who's made 33 appearances. Just looking for a fee. Doesn't actually mention a fee there, Mark.
No. Well,
they've triggered an 80 million release clause. There you go.
Anyway.
He's got an 80 million euros release clause, so they triggered that.
Yeah.
So there we go.
So, as I say, the Saul has joined Chelsea. I've got to be honest, mate. I don't feel like Chelsea actually needed a midfielder. I don't think they actually need. I mean, once they got Lukaku in, I sort of felt that they didn't need anything. I mean, you know, they were trying to get this Koundé in, the French defender. And, I mean, they don't even need him at the back, to be honest with you. So it's a little bit baffling. I mean, obviously, you know, they're strengthening positions and stuff like that. But you kind of think to yourself, how often is this Saul lad from Atletico Madrid going to play for Chelsea? You know, apart from maybe cup games and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's an interesting one. It just baffles me because I sort of sit there and think, here we are, you know, we're scrambling around as Saints supporters, you know, and the club's buying £5 million players that are full of potential, but that's it. And yet you've got Chelsea who don't even need a midfielder. But you know, they've gone out, they've got a lad in, got the relevant experience playing up for Atletico Madrid, and you know, you just kind of sit and think to yourself, it does show the chasm in the sense of where certain people are shopping and then where the lower tier of the Premier League clubs are shopping.
So moving on to the lower league teams, Crystal Palace signed Hughes from Watford for 6 million. That's Will Hughes, and also Edwin Edouard leaves Celtic for Crystal Palace in a £14 million move.
Right. So very, very quickly, I'm going to go on the attack here. Will Hughes, we needed a defensive midfielder, didn't we? Ralph was talking about number 6. Well, Hughes could have done the job. Year left on his contract. Obviously wasn't going to sign one with Watford. Crystal Palace have come in. They've signed him for 6 million. Got all the relevant pedigree. Played it on the England under 21 level. You know, more than good enough for the Premier League. Even though, you know, got relegated with Watford. You know, but he is one of the players that you would have earmarked and said, you know, somebody could have came in from last season. As it is, people are watching the contract situation. They've signed him this season. And I think he should be, you know, even if Patrick Vieira's tenure doesn't work out as manager, right? I still would say that Will Hughes is a good signing. So that's that. Then obviously on top of that, you had Austin Edward signing. All I'll say is someone that was obviously linked to Southampton, 14 million quid. Yes, on the look of it, you sort of sit there and go, look, doesn't look too bad. We could have afforded that. I think the issue with Austin Edward, and this is something that you and I aren't privy to, but I'd love to know the wages he's getting paid weekly by Crystal Palace, because,
Big wages.
Obviously you can't go by all the press reports, but, this is coming from well-respected people in the know in Scotland, and it was believed that he was demanding significant money for the move south into the Premier League.
The report I saw that stood out was the fact that his wages are huge. That's what Saints were put off by. And I've got my own take on that anyway. But anyway, moving on to...
It's not, Mark, it's not his wages, though. It's his demands, because
wage demands, that's what
Saints can afford Celtic's wages and more.
I was referring...
demands. It was his greed that we're talking about. So
exactly what I'm referring to.
God only knows what Crystal Palace are actually paying him.
Anyway, I won't worry about that, everybody, because James Ward-Prowse is now the highest paid player on £100,000 a week, so we don't have to worry about Edson Edouard. Anyway, moving on to Everton. Everton signed ex-Newcastle striker, Venezuelan striker Solomon Rondon.
Yeah,
it's an interesting one.
Interesting this, because Everton haven't really, I find it fascinating. Obviously, Rafa Benitez has started the season unbeaten in Everton. In fact, I think I'm right in saying that he's 1-3-3. And the thing is oddly enough, right, if you look up the business he done over the summer, he's gone for experienced players. The only one that you would say was kind of young would be Demarai Gray, because he's brought in Solomon Rondon, 31, obviously relevant Premier League experience with West Brom, yeah. And then he's then brought in Begovic, the goalkeeper Begovic, and he also brought in Andres Townsend. Now you sit there and you think to yourself, he hasn't laid out a lot of money. I mean, all of these players more or less joined on a free. The only one he paid a fee for was Demarai Gray. It'd be interesting to see how they go for the rest of the season. Bear in mind that Everton have always been accused of flashing the cash because of the owner that they've got. But we like to think, we did quite well in the window, and we did. But Everton have probably only spent about $2 million on a transfer fee, and that's kind of it, and. Yeah, it'd be just interesting to see how they go for the rest of the season. But I think Benitez has been quite canny during the window.
No, I'd agree with that. So move on to Leeds United. They've completed the sign of Dan James from Man United, 5-year contract, £25 million. Again, one of the worst kept secrets at the transfer window.
I mean, what I would say is Leeds probably feel that they're getting an upgrade in that position, and I'd probably go along with that. It's a good signing for them. Deemed, unfortunately for Daniel James, and I don't necessarily agree with it, by the way, because he's a young player. Obviously at United, there's demands when you're playing for, I say quote unquote a big club. And what I would say is he is victim of a certain individual coming to the football club late in the transfer window, and obviously we've got to touch on that later on, so I'm looking forward to that like a hole in the head. But yeah, so Daniel James has had to make way, and hopefully he's found a good home in Leeds that will appreciate his talents.
Absolutely. So moving on to Leicester. Leicester have completed the loan signing for the season of RB Leipzig winger Ademola Lookman.
I can hear the Saints fans from here. Why not us? Why not us? Ralph, what are you doing? I'm sat, Mark, I was sat there, right, when I would have seen this last night, and I thought to myself, oh, well done, Saints, for signing up Theo Walcott. Theo Walcott for 2 years, or Mr. Lukeman for a season.
Not even that. Even worse than that. Even worse than that. Theo Walcott, with Theo Walcott's wages over 2 years, Damari Gray for 1.7 million permanently.
But the thing as well, mate, is right. The one thing that I would say is that Leicester City, at the end of the day, if they come knocking, you're gonna go and join them, aren't you? As well, because obviously they're a club that's building towards a future, and have them off the back of the FA Cup. They've got Europe again this season in the Europa League.
Yeah.
And obviously Lookman's gone there. But you do sort of look at something like that and you think, come on, Ralph, you have a working relationship with these players, because he did sign during Ralph's time there, and also Ralph previously a few weeks ago had said that he'd spoken to Damiola on the phone. And I'm sort of sat there and I'm thinking a little bit more forward planning, and we could have maybe rather than signing Theo Walcott up at the time, which probably seemed like a good bit of business to the people who are recruiting. I just sort of think if you had a Hellfire, you could have had Mr. Lukeman, or you could have had Damari Gray in instead. But there you go. Hey ho. Let's see what happens, Mark.
Yeah, moving on to Man United. Cristiano Ronaldo saying, I'm back where I belong. Well, you're not back where you belong because you were in talks with Man City.
Yes, that is correct. So I'm led to believe that he had talks with Manchester City in the morning, and then he nipped over to Old Trafford to have a brief word and signed the paperwork in the afternoon. Which
the thing is, as well, he's dedicated his return to Man United. He's dedicated his return to Man United to Sir Alex Ferguson. Did that slip your mind when you were at Man City in the morning, then, Cristiano? Did it? What an absolute crock!
It's called hedging your bets, Mark.
It's called lying through your teeth.
But, it'd be interesting. Obviously, the vast people who are supposedly in the know, all these journalists, right? And we all know from the different gossip that we've had to read out the last couple of weeks, right, over the summer, that there are definitely journalists that are in the don't know when it comes to Saints. Yeah. They're absolutely clueless, right? I mean, I'll give you an example of that. Ryan Christie joining Saints, right? Ryan Christie joins Bournemouth down the road. Right? And we've had other such stuff during the summer. So at the end of the day, all these journalists are saying that the best piece of business in the window was Ronaldo going back to Man United. We shall see. But, I mean, obviously, look, it's a ka-ching effect for the Premier League. Yeah. It's obviously ka-ching for Ronaldo. There is the suggestion, and I don't necessarily buy into this, but obviously the amount of shirt sales and stuff like that. I mean, I'm sorry, but I've never heard of anybody's shirt sales actually offset what a club's paid for them. So I've never bought into that one, to be honest with you.
Lionel Messi's been very close to it. That's all I'm going to say.
Anyway,
moving on.
Probably did.
Moving on. Brandon Williams, Norwich City signed Manchester United fullback on loan. Quite clearly, Lexby Avenue was a far better quote than we march on. He's decided to join Norwich instead of Saints, who he's been linked with numerous times, Mark.
All I would say is, Mark, judging by his performance, right, and only seen edited highlights of said performance of Brandon Williams, right, is, I mean, considering that Saints were in line, let's say, potentially, to pay £2 million loan fee plus his wages, which was basically around 60 to 70 grand a week for a person who very rarely kicks a ball for United. Obviously, it's all to do with your potential. But I would say that Saints dodged a bullet mate in signing him because he was all over the place for Norwich on Saturday. So, I think we should maybe rejoice in the fact that we didn't actually recruit him this summer.
Yeah. So moving on to Spurs. Spurs have signed 18-year-old Pape Matar Sarr from Metz, the 18-year-old defensive midfielder. They've signed him and he's going to remain in the French league with the same club on loan for the rest of the season. He's been capped by Senegal, played 25 times for Metz last season, scored 4 times and all 3 games this term. So there we go.
Yeah, and obviously also then we've got Emerson Royal, who has joined Tottenham.
Tottenham signed Brazil right back Emerson Royal from Barcelona for 25.8 million and let Serge Aurier leave as a free agent.
Right, so effectively the Tottenham business in a nutshell. I mean, Sarr obviously has done well at Metz, and he'll come in at Tottenham. He's one for the future. You might see him the odd time this season, but obviously it's basically him building for the rest of his Spurs career. And then you come to Emerson Royal. Obviously, it's the same position. He plays obviously right back, and I would expect big things from him for the money that Saints has paid. I've got to be honest, I don't know a lot about him. I know he's 22 years of age, and even though he's come from Barcelona, he spent the last 2 seasons at Real Betis. So, we'll have to wait and see how he gets on. But yeah.
Definitely. And moving on to Watford. Moussa Sissoko, Watford signed midfielder from Tottenham for around £3 million.
Yeah, I mean, Moussa Sissoko, again, yes, okay, he's 32 years of age. £3 million for the experience that he has, that's nothing. That's probably a fairly decent signing for Watford. Obviously it will all depend on how they go in the league, but I would say for the money, £3 million, it's nothing. 32 years of age, all the relevant experience, and hopefully that experience can tell for Watford Football Club.
Absolutely. So moving on to West Ham. West Ham have signed Kurt Zouma from Chelsea on a 4-year deal for £29.8 million.
Yeah, so I tell you what, how times have changed, and this is what happens when you've got a new stadium, right? And you've got a manager that's all of a sudden, because let's be honest, since West Ham have gone to this new stadium, they've wasted money. And I think David Moyes has come in there, and he's got a structure to the way they play and everything else, and I've got to be honest and say that it's a lot of money, for Kurt Zouma, but obviously you get what you pay for, and, would they be making these sort of signings, a few seasons ago? No, because it would be helter-skelter. But the fact that David Moyes is there and there's a structure to how they target players and stuff like that, I would say, the Hammers fans must be hoping that, he replicates basically what he's done at Chelsea or when he's been on loan at other clubs in the Premier League. And if he does that, then, they've got a good signing there.
Yeah, also West Ham fans quite happy at the fact that they've also signed Croatian midfielder Nikola Vlasic from CSKA Moscow. They'll pay €30 million, 26.8 million plus add-ons for the 23-year-old. He signed a 5-year contract that includes the option for an extra year, 26 caps for Croatia, 4 of which came at Euro 2020. He scored 33 goals and assisted 21 for CSKA Moscow in the past 2 seasons and was named Russian Premier League Footballer of the Year in 2020. So good signing for them.
But, Vlasic, if he's as good as what I've seen of him, Mark, in the Premier League, they've got a signing on their hands there, 100%.
One hell of a player.
No, exactly. So
for anybody who doesn't know the sort of player he is, he's very similar to Luka Modric, Mark. I think you said.
Yeah, he is. Yep. Yeah,
they've got a cracking signing there if he's anything like that.
Yeah,
they've got a cracking signing there if he's anything like that.
I mean, I think
absolutely amazing.
It's not prefer to compare like by like, but what I would say is even the footage that I've seen of Vaclik, I mean, I thought he would have actually gone to someone bigger, to be honest with you, Mark. I'm surprised there wasn't other people interested in signing him, but there you go.
Absolutely. Right, there's a guy here that I think we were probably crying out for as well, Mark, who's also joined West Ham. Alex Kral from Spartak Moscow has actually joined on season-long loan with an option to buy. So obviously Croatian midfielder Nikola Vlasic has just joined them, but they've also already got Czechs Thomas Susek and Vladimir Kufal at West Ham. But they've now added Alex Kral on a season-long loan. He says Alex Kral, centre midfield, another great player.
I've got to say, Alex Kral, I thought had a really good Euros for the Czech Republic. He was one of the unsung heroes, and the fact that obviously they've been able to add to the West Ham Czech family, let's put it like that. You got like you said, Thomas and Kufel there. As I say, interesting to see how West Ham goes. The only criticism I would have is no criticism of any of the recruitment they've done during the window, but one criticism I would have is I would have thought that West Ham would have targeted a striker during the window, but they didn't. But, you look at what they've recruited, and what they've recruited is quality, but it's a lot of money. Let's be honest, it's a lot of money as well. And
it is.
David Moyes will get judged because the West Ham board obviously have backed them during this window, albeit.
Surprising thing is, obviously Michail Antonio's in great form. If he gets injured, they're in big trouble. You look at the money they've laid out on signings. Danny Ings went to Aston Villa for 25 million. He could have gone to West Ham.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that is where their Achilles heel is.
Yeah, absolutely.
If Antonio gets injured, I mean, he's out on international duty at the minute with Jamaica. And you kind of sit there and go, if he gets injured, they don't really have any sort of out-and-out striker. Because I wouldn't even say, before the conversion, I wouldn't even say Antonio was an out-and-out striker. So, I do think that they missed the trick not signing one in this window. But, the thing is, are you going to argue with David Moyes at the minute? I mean, they finished sixth last season, and you would think the start that they've made, albeit a little bit of a slip against Crystal Palace on Saturday, but the start they've made, would you call them out for not bringing a striker in? I'm sure he's got a structure of the way that he wants to play on the pitch.
So, moving on to football news now. The first article is actually a Daily Mail article relating to AFC Wimbledon's trial use of substitution. Unfortunately, for some reason, that article is not actually available at the moment, everybody. So I do apologise. I don't know what's happened there. There's a bit of a Google error. It's not letting us access it.
Well,
so I don't know if Mark's able to give us some
what the actual
headline
news is, right? Because you might sit there and think AFC Wimbledon. Well, what's happening at AFC Wimbledon, right? This is amazing, mate. I couldn't believe it when I read it. Okay, so AFC Wimbledon are employing a tactical substitutions coach. So they're taking the responsibility for substitutions away from the manager, right? And they've got someone in who actually brings the substitutions on when he sees fit. And and does this surprise me? Again, I think it's looking for an edge against other clubs. I mean, we've had throw-in specialists, we've had all sorts of other specialists. So now we've got a subs specialist, Mark. So What's your take on that one?
It's an interesting one. They've got all sorts of specialists in the game, so why not a subspecialist?
Do you know?
Takes all
I was
sorts,
just
doesn't it?
amazed when I read it, because surely if you're the manager of FC Wimbledon, you're sort of sat there thinking, I'm not overly joyed about this. This bloke's going to be basically, naming the sub that he wants to bring on, at whatever stage during the game.
Well, in fairness, it's like having a director at football who thinks they're the manager, isn't it? Oh, hang on, we've had one of them. Anyway, moving on to government plans to lift football standing ban. So the government are planning to lift the football standing ban. Good news for people that like stand, Mark. Bad news for disabled people who get annoyed by people standing in front of them. It doesn't happen very often these days, but it's still annoying.
Yeah, I've got to be honest about this, Mark. I mean, like you said, it's kind of a little bit of a mixed bag if you're disabled. Because I obviously read it and thought it's good for those people that want to stand, and there are significant numbers.
Yeah.
And let that be the case. I'm all for people being able to do what they want to do. But obviously, if you go to a ground, and I'm just thinking off the top of my head, Mark, right? So a lot of the grounds, obviously, the disabled fans are in front, so no biggie there. Okay. Yeah. Or you're on a viewing platform.
However,
again, no problem.
It's also
right? but
very bad.
Where there is a problem is, right, at Chelsea, right, the wheelchairs are at the back of the stand, which means that when people stand up, you can't see.
Yep.
Right. I mean, I'm just talking specifically from, being in the away section at Chelsea. You can't see anyway, because obviously, automatically, if you're an away crowd, the supporters stand up anyway in the away section. So
if you are a disabled fan, wheelchair user, if you're one of those people that likes to get shirts signed at the end of games, if you're in an away ground, you haven't got much chance of that. It makes it more difficult for people standing because they'll stand in front of you. If you're at St Mary's and we've won, it gets difficult at the end of the game because everyone's standing in front of you. So it's difficult to say hello to the players or get a signed shirt, isn't it? And it's also difficult to sort of see an awful lot. But it is what it is, and we have to make the best of it, I guess, don't we?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I get where you're coming from, but the kind of signing shirts isn't relevant, mate. I mean, it's just more important that you're able to watch a game of football without interruption, to be fair.
Absolutely. So moving on, this is something that you and I spoke about on the pod last year, and we were very keen to see it, and we spoke about it on the radio show. Leicester are to play their Women's Super League games at the King Power Stadium. Fantastic. And if Saints get to the Women's Super League, I'd like to see them play at St Mary's.
Yeah, see, this is the thing for me, Mark, right, is obviously they're the first team to announce that they're going to, the vast majority, right, of Women's Super League games are going to be played in the, in the actual home stadium, right? Which you don't have even for the more successful clubs, the Chelseas and the Man Cities. I mean, they don't play at their home stadiums. They play at, I think Man City have a training pitch which accommodates about 10,000, a bit like Barcelona, and they play there. And let's hope that this means that, whether it's even in the Championship or at the top level of the English women's game, that it becomes commonplace that all the fixtures are played at the home stadiums, and incorporate that into the season ticket.
Absolutely.
And I think there's enough interest in the women's game for it to happen, mate, to be honest with you. So well done, Leicester, for taking the initiative on, and come on the rest of the clubs.
And I know with this final story, you're going to be over the moon about this, Mark, given the country it's involved and given the nature of it as well. Republic of Ireland making an equal pay move for the men's and women's senior teams. First nation to do it, absolutely to be applauded. But obviously, being from Ireland yourself, Mark, you'll be over the moon about it.
Yeah, no,
you'd be happy if it's Northern Ireland, obviously.
Really pleased to read about it, mate. I mean, I think the thing is it's a great step by the FAI. And also, I would say that, it's not an insignificant step by the male players, or the men players, I should say, because obviously they've taken a significant pay drop to make sure that, the women and the men are being paid equally when they're appearing for the national team. And again, bit like the Leicester story, I hope that, other international teams, see fit to follow suit.
No, absolutely. 100%. I think it's a fantastic move, and it's been long overdue, and I'm really glad to see it, to be fair. So anyway, that brings us to the end of the other football news section. So very short break, and we're going to be doing Two Saints roundtable review of Newport County 0, Saints 8. You heard me correctly. Newport County 0, Saints 8. It's not a misprint. So that's coming up very shortly. So moving on to the second game of Saints roundtable that we're reviewing, it's Newport County away. And I know Mark took the very, very long trip to Wales for an 8-0 Saints win. Yes, you heard me right, everybody. 8-0. Probably should have been a cricket score, but I'll go to Mark now, who was actually there, and he can give you a bit more insight.
It was what you kind of, obviously I wasn't expecting it now, right? But it was the kind of professional performance, right, that you expect when you're playing a team that's 3 leagues below you. You're sat there and there is a degree of expectancy. I mean, obviously, I had said before the game that, it is a potential banana skin because Cup game, Premier League sides have gone there in the FA Cup and lost, so you're always a little bit wary. I do think the fact that they had the pitch relayed, kind of played into our hands more than it did their hands, because normally, access water and all that at Rodney Parade. But what I was going to say, so we basically had Bojan open the scoring, and it was a shot from Nathan Redmond. Really, in the first half, he should have had a hat-trick. It is what it is. Kyle Walker-Peters, marauding forward, scored a goal in the first half. Obviously, we went in 3-0 up, and then the second half, we had a exquisite strike from Bojan again, and then a kind of between sort of Nathan Redmond scoring, we had the El Sanusi show.
It certainly was.
I'm doing Nathan Teller this service because obviously he scored as well, but then it kind of turned into the Mohamed El Sanusi show, and he scores the hat-trick. As I say, one of them was a bit like Bojan's second goal. I mean, one of them was a really good strike. And really, at the end of the day, it was sort of interesting because it 8-0, possession-wise, dominant. I think we had about 70%. They had about 30%. Shots-wise, Saints had 24 shots to their 3, which kind of tells you, the tale of the tape. I mean,
100%.
None of the Newport shots were on target. Saints had 14 on target. But as I say, for me personally, Mark, it was a case of job done. And it was done very professional. The thing is, a lot of the time when you go and you play lower league opposition, you're expecting your team as the Premier League team,
100%.
For them to show how good they were, and they did that on Wednesday night.
That brings us to the end of the Newport County review. So thanks everyone for listening. So welcome back everyone. All that's left for me to say is thank you very much for joining us today, listening to mine and Mark's warblings for the last hour and a bit. Hope you've really enjoyed it. All that's left for me to say is join us again next week when the Two Saints go marching in again. It's goodbye from me.
It's goodbye from me. People continue to be kind to one another, and hopefully you enjoyed the podcast. You continue listening each week. Mark Absolutely. And I promise to make sure that we do a podcast every week from now on. So thanks for listening, and hopefully see you the other side of next week.
There you go. We're out of here. Catch you again next week. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.
Bye.